At a family gathering, Mom said, "Your sister just bought a super expensive apartment. You could never do that." So I smiled and replied, "I did. 2 years ago." No one bothered to ask. They demanded a housewarming party, and I simply said, "Maybe." I stared at my phone in disbelief. My mother had just called, inviting me to dinner at my parents' house. It had been months since we last spoke, and years since I had visited them. "I'm Donna, I'm 32 years old, and I'm the black sheep of the family, or at least that's how they see me. Growing up, I was always the second choice. My younger sister Melissa was the favorite, the golden child who never made mistakes. She was prettier, more charming, and had that ability to make everyone fall in love with her, especially our parents. It wasn't that they were cruel to me, it was just obvious who they preferred. The dance recital they missed because they were too busy. Somehow, when it was Melissa's turn, time magically appeared. My average grades led to lectures, but hers meant she's doing her best. I sighed and put my phone down on the marble counter, its coolness reminding me of that little luxury in the apartment I never told them about. Why was Mom calling now? What did they want? "All right," I murmured to myself, "I'll go." A week later, I arrived at my parents' modest house in the suburbs. I had intentionally dressed down, jeans, a basic blouse, minimal accessories, nothing that might suggest I wasn't the mediocre assistant manager they imagined me to be. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Dad opened the door. "Donna, come in, come in." His welcome was warm, but a bit distracted. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I saw why. Melissa was on the sofa, in full performance mode, with Mom and Dad hanging on her every word as she shared some work anecdote. She stopped when she saw me. Her perfect smile didn't waver. "Oh, the prodigal daughter has returned," she said with feigned sweetness. Mom immediately stood up. "Donna, sweetheart, how wonderful that you came." She gave me a quick hug and then sat right back down next to Melissa. I settled into an armchair across from them, watching as Melissa gave my outfit a barely disguised look of disdain. "I love that secondhand vintage look," she said mockingly. "Thanks," I replied calmly. Not everyone needs brand names to feel good about themselves. Dad cleared his throat. "Well, Donna, your mother made something delicious for dinner. It'll be ready in about 20 minutes. We chatted about superficial things until Mom called us to the table, the same table from our childhood, but now it felt like part of another life. Dad poured wine, and Melissa resumed center stage, talking about her job at the marketing agency. "They literally begged me to take the Johnson account," she said. "They say I'm the only one who can handle it." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," said Mom, touching her hand proudly. Dad turned to me. "And you, Donna, are you still at the same company? What was it again, assistant to something?" I took a sip of wine before answering. "Still at Berkshire Financial, yes." Melissa let out a laugh. "Seriously? 8 years in the same position? Most people would have been promoted by now." I clenched my jaw but kept my composure. They didn't know I had been the chief financial officer for 3 years, that my annual bonus alone exceeded Melissa's full salary, that last year I was on Business Weekly's 40 under 40 list. But I had never told them. They never asked. I just smiled. "Not everyone rushes ahead or has your talent," Mom added, serving Melissa more mashed potatoes. Dinner continued in the same rhythm, Melissa boasting, my parents admiring her, and me just being there. "I've been saving for Hawaii for months," Melissa commented. "But when you make good money, it's not that hard." She shot me a smug look. "That's great," I replied, setting down my fork. "But I have to go. I have an early meeting tomorrow. Thanks for dinner." I got up and grabbed my bag. Mom walked me to the door. "It was lovely seeing you, sweetheart," she said, touching my shoulder. Driving back to my downtown apartment, a suspicion lingered. There was a hidden reason for that reunion. Whatever it was, I was just glad to be home. Back in my spacious apartment, I took off my shoes and poured myself a glass of wine, the real kind, not the cheap stuff they served back there. Just as I settled onto my balcony with a view of the glowing city, my phone buzzed with a message from Melissa, Hope you're not too sad about your pathetic life, sis. Not all of us can be successful. Don't worry, I'll send you a postcard from Hawaii. I stared at it for a moment, then laughed. If only she knew. I deleted the message, took another sip of wine, and enjoyed the view from the 28th floor of my luxurious building. My relationship with my family hadn't always been like this. As a child, before Melissa was born, everything was different. I remember Dad tossing me into the air, Mom telling me bedtime stories at night. But everything changed when Melissa arrived, when I was 4 years old. She was an angelic baby, hardly ever cried, always smiling, with enormous blue eyes that charmed everyone. By the time I was 10, I had already understood my place. Melissa was special. I was just there. I did everything I could to earn their approval: clubs, studying until dawn, volunteering in high school. I was the top student, captain of the debate team, editor of the yearbook. At my graduation, I searched the crowd for their proud faces, but their seats were empty. They had gone to Melissa's dance competition. Something broke inside me that day. I realized I would never be enough for them. So I stopped trying. I earned a full scholarship to Princeton, graduated with honors, and started working at Berkshire Financial. Within 5 years, I was already leading a team, and 3 years ago, I was promoted to Chief Financial Officer. They know nothing about it. My phone rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Mom again. I hesitated but answered. Next Saturday we're having a family gathering, she said. Everyone's coming, Aunt Carol, Uncle Jim, your cousins. We'd love for you to come. I frowned. And what are we celebrating? Oh, just a special announcement, she said in a mysterious tone. I should have said no, but curiosity got the better of me. All right, what time? At 4, Donna. Try to dress appropriately. I hung up, furious, like I normally showed up in pajamas on Saturdays. Standing in front of my wardrobe, I hesitated. I chose an elegant black Chanel dress, sober, tasteful, expensive for most. It looked simple but was worth more than Melissa's monthly salary. When I arrived, the driveway was full of cars. I recognized several family members' vehicles. I took a deep breath and went in. Donna. Aunt Carol shouted, hugging me. It's been years since I saw you. What a formal woman you've become. Nice to see you too, Aunt Carol, I smiled. For 15 minutes, I chatted with relatives I barely remembered, while my parents and Melissa whispered in a corner, throwing occasional glances my way. Whatever it was they were going to announce, they were extremely excited about it. I never liked family gatherings, all those fake smiles, those passive-aggressive comments disguised as interest, the way everyone asks about you just to compare you with someone else. But that afternoon was different, because I knew something they didn't, and I was tired of pretending. Mom stood up with her wine glass in hand and a smile that almost looked genuine. Dear family, she said, gently tapping her glass with a spoon, thank you for being here. Today is a very special day. Melissa has something incredible to share with everyone. There it was, the big moment, the grand announcement. Melissa stood up like a model on a runway, with that sparkle in her eyes she only had when everyone was looking at her. Her voice sounded rehearsed, like she had already practiced in front of a mirror. I've been offered a position as regional marketing director at a very prestigious company in Miami, she said, as if she had just been chosen to save the world. I'm moving in a month. The applause came immediately. Aunt Carol even stood up to hug her. Mom looked on the verge of tears from the emotion. I simply poured myself more wine. I'm very excited, Melissa continued, scanning the room until her gaze found me. Not everyone gets the chance to grow. Some people prefer comfort. I looked at her, not with anger, but with a cold calmness I had learned to cultivate over the years. Comfort? I said in a low voice, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Melissa blinked. She hadn't expected a response. Yes, she replied with a fake smile. I mean, there are people who spend years at the same job, in the same position. And well, if that makes them happy, all eyes turned to me. Mom pursed her lips. Dad gripped his wine glass, his jaw tense. I set mine down on the table and slowly stood. Well, I suppose since we're sharing accomplishments, I said, I can share that 3 years ago, I was promoted to Chief Financial Officer at Berkshire Financial. Sound familiar? Maybe you've heard of it, it's a multinational company. I manage finances for 3 regions and lead a team of 40 people. Absolute silence. The uncomfortable kind that echoes. Excuse me? Mom muttered. Yes, Mom. I earn quite well. Much better than assistant to something, like you used to say. In fact, last year I was included in Business Weekly's 40 under 40 list, but of course, since no one ever asked, I never mentioned it. Melissa was looking at me with narrowed eyes. I couldn't tell if she was more shocked or furious, probably both. I opened my purse, took out my phone, and held it up. And by the way, I added, since we're being honest, this message you sent me after the last dinner, does it sound familiar? I tapped the screen and read out loud, I hope you're not too sad about your pathetic life, sister. Not all of us can be successful. Don't worry, I'll send you a postcard from Hawaii. A few relatives let out small gasps. Uncle Jim shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mom seemed to be searching the ceiling for an explanation. It was a joke, Melissa said with a forced little laugh, between sisters. No, Melissa, I interrupted. Yours was never a joke. It was always a competition, one that only you thought you were winning. I turned to my parents. They were still silent, pale, as if they no longer recognized the person in front of them. And are you going to say something? Because I spent my entire life seeking your approval, and in the end, I realized I didn't need it. You chose a favorite, and it wasn't me. That's fine. But today you get to see the woman I became without your help, and you don't get to pretend you didn't know. Dad opened his mouth halfway, but no words came out. Thanks for dinner, I said, picking up my purse. It was nice seeing everyone, even if it's for the last time. I walked toward the door. Before leaving, I turned once more to Melissa. Oh, and about that new job, be careful with the reports you submit. You sent me one months ago to fix. It was full of errors. I saved it that time. There won't be a next time. I left, not with a slammed door, not with tears, just with the certainty that I had said everything I needed to say. And for the first time in many years, I felt free. The elevator in the building still smelled like cheap perfume and reheated empanadas. As it descended to the ground floor, I looked at myself in the interior mirror. I was intact, makeup in place, dress without a wrinkle, posture upright. But something in my eyes had changed. Not sadness, exhaustion. When I stepped outside, the air was colder than I expected. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and my phone vibrated. First a call from Mom, I ignored it. Then a message from Dad. A simple, can we talk? I blocked him for 5 minutes. Not because I was angry, that had already passed, but because I knew that call would be full of excuses I had no interest in hearing. I walked to my car, opened the door, and sat in silence with my hands on the wheel. I didn't want to go home. Not yet. The adrenaline was still trembling in my ribs. I typed into the GPS an address I hadn't written in years. I headed to the college cafe, the one I used to go to when I was studying at Princeton. A new version had opened in the city. 25 minutes later, I was there. Same logo, same menu, as if someone had tried to bottle up the memories. I went in. There weren't many people. I sat in a corner and ordered a double espresso with no sugar. I took out my phone and opened Instagram. Melissa had already posted a selfie from the family announcement. Everyone smiling, Mom with teary eyes, Dad clapping, her in the center. Blessed by so much love, said the caption. I nearly spit out my coffee. 5 minutes later, I received another message, from an unknown number. Hi, this is Martine. Not sure if you remember me, second cousin, son of cousin Sonia. I was at the gathering today. Can we talk? I blinked. Martine? Martine, yes, I remembered, a short, shy boy who was always clinging to his mother at family gatherings years ago. He'd grown up. And apparently, he'd been there, watching everything. About what? I replied. His response was immediate. About Melissa. And about something I think you should know. I sent him my location. In less than 20 minutes, he showed up. He was taller than I remembered, with slightly messy hair and square glasses. He wore a shirt with rolled-up sleeves and had the look of someone who had been on the verge of saying something important for a long time. He sat down across from me without asking for permission. I didn't mind. You were brutal today, he said bluntly. Thanks. It was time. I want to tell you something because I think, well, it might affect you. To protect you. Or help you. I don't know. He gestured for me to let him speak. Melissa didn't get that job in Miami. I stared at him. Excuse me? It was all a lie. Well, half a lie. Yes, she applied. But she was rejected. I work at that same company. The presentation she sent was a disaster. There's an internal list with the worst candidates of the month. She's in the top 5. I leaned back in my chair. My heart was pounding, not from shock, but from confirmation. And that's not all, he continued. I overheard your parents before you arrived. They were planning the announcement as if it were real. They knew everything. But they still presented her like a star. I said nothing. I wasn't even sure what part hurt more, the lie or the complicity. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because you were the only honest person in that room. And because I like you. Even if you don't know me. I looked at him for a moment. Do you have proof? He nodded, took out his phone, searched through his email, and showed me a PDF file with internal comments from the selection department. Melissa Johnson, technical weakness. Inflated data. Not viable for the position. A friend leaked it to me. He also knows the whole thing was staged. I closed my eyes for a moment. Took a deep breath. Thank you, I said finally. I don't know what I'll do with this. But thank you. Do whatever you want. But, in case you're interested, he opened a folder on his phone. There's a vacancy that just opened in my department. Senior VP. I'd like to work with you. I smiled for the first time that night. Are you inviting me to apply? I'm not asking you to come fix the chaos people like Melissa left behind. I leaned in toward him. And what does it take? Courage. Cold blood. And an excellent memory. I had all of it. I left the cafe past 11. On my phone, 5 more unread messages. One from Mom, what you did wasn't fair. Your sister is having a hard time. We'll talk. I blocked her. I had talked enough for one night. The next day, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had anything urgent to do, but because my body was still in high alert mode. The family dinner, the lies, Martine's revelation, it all spun in my head like a broken dryer. I stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling while the city started to stir below. The email with the PDF was still on my phone like a bomb about to go off. I reread it 3 times. Every line was another stake in the myth of perfection my family had built around Melissa. It was ironic, while I was building a real career with no one noticing, she was setting up a flimsy facade and everyone applauded it like it was made of marble. But it wasn't. It was cardboard painted in cheap gold. I got up, made coffee, and sat in front of my laptop. Martine was right, there was a vacancy. A very juicy one. It wasn't that I needed the job. But what better way to close a circle than by walking through the door that had slammed in Melissa's face? I opened my CV, updated it, uploaded the cover letter, personalized, direct, elegant, and sent it. 20 minutes later, I received an automatic confirmation. 2 hours later, a human response. We would love to meet you. Are you available for an interview this week? I replied yes. I smiled, not because of the job, but for the silent message it would send. At 5 in the afternoon, the phone rang again, Mom. This time I let it ring. Then a message followed, your sister is devastated. She says she can't get out of bed. Are you happy now? I didn't reply. What an irony. A whole life spent minimizing my emotions, and now suddenly Melissa's sadness was a national tragedy. But that wasn't what bothered me. What really pissed me off was the fact that still, even after everything, my mother expected me to feel guilty. 2 days later, I was at the interview. A glass skyscraper, 41st floor, view of the bay. Miss Johnson, said the COO, I won't lie to you. We already had an internal candidate in mind. But your profile, it impressed us. I'm glad to hear that, I replied. And I know this might sound inappropriate, but, are you related to Melissa Johnson? I looked him in the eye. Yes, she's my younger sister. He leaned back in his chair, curious. She applied recently and didn't make it through the screening. Not that surprising, I said, crossing my legs. Sometimes sharing a last name doesn't mean sharing the same level of preparation. The man smiled and jotted something down. I returned home that night with a strange mix of calm and anticipation. I knew that by accepting that job, I was entering a new territory, one where I didn't have to hide who I was, what I had achieved, or what I was worth. But it was also an act of silent warfare. A statement. The next day was even better. Martine called. Did you see Melissa's Instagram? No, why? She posted that she's reconsidering her next steps, that she turned down an opportunity because she wants to focus on personal projects. I let out a laugh that escaped me unintentionally. Yeah, sure. Personal projects, like lying to everyone. Your parents commented with heart emojis. Happy faces. Of course. When the lie is comfortable, nobody wants the truth. Silence on the line. Then Martine spoke again. Hey, what if I invited you to dinner? Would that be weird? I blinked, not out of surprise, but because my brain needed a second to switch from revenge mode to someone is flirting with me. Depends. Does dinner include decent wine? The best. And no stories about perfect cousins. Then maybe yes. That night, already in pajamas, I received one last message from Mom. Short. Cold. I don't recognize what you've become. I looked at it. Let my finger hover above the screen for a moment. And finally, I wrote, I do. I've become someone who no longer needs your approval. Send. Silence. And for the first time, that silence was mine. Martine arrived on time. He brought a bottle of Chilean wine and a smile that looked far too good on someone from my family. We had dinner at a discreet Italian restaurant. No pretentious lights, no ridiculously decorated plates. Just good food and unfiltered conversation. Have you always been like this? He asked while dipping a piece of bread into olive oil. So direct? It took me years to stop asking for permission to exist, I answered. He nodded like someone who understands without judging. I liked that. I didn't want comfort, I wanted a clear gaze. Almost at the end of dinner, my phone vibrated. Email notification. I opened it, it was from Martine's company. Formal offer. Extremely high salary. Obscene benefits. And a short message, we hope you accept. Your profile is exactly what we need. Martine looked at me. I could tell he already knew. But he didn't say anything. He just raised his glass. To what comes next, he said. We toasted. 2 days later, I signed the contract.